Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt Santee. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm a little bit chatty. And joining me today, finally, yay, I've been trying to get her to do this for a long time, Melinda Marshall. Hi, Melinda.
Hi.
Melinda, tell folks who you are and where you are and what you do.
Melinda Marshall. I own Mountaintop Family Childcare in upstate New York. We are a family childcare in Worcester, New York. My daughter-in-law and her future sister-in-law are both my assistants. And we are in my home with we have 12 to 16 children a day, between 6 weeks and 12 years old, mixed family childcare. Play-based, mostly outside in nature, and doing our family childcare thing.
Yay. I know I was gonna say, I know you guys are outside a lot and I love it. And you're so I'm gonna fangirl you for a minute. Say I love that we connected on Facebook. I love watching the way your program runs, kind of, and the photos you share, and just you're even like, I don't know if this is gonna embarrass you, but sometimes you just do like a here's why it is and here's what's happening, and screw you if you don't want to come here post. Like if someone has said something critical, you're just so open. You're like, this is my philosophy and this is what I believe the children deserve, so this is what they're going to get here, and if you don't like it, there are other places that will give you what you want.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at. So yeah, we're I think honesty goes a long way with my parents, so they see, what they see is what they're going to get.
Yeah.
When it comes to mess and curriculum and me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really I think it's brave, and it's something I struggled with when I was like a center director, because it was hard for me to say, oh, you're probably not going to like it here then, when they would ask questions, or anyway. So thank you for all of that, Melinda, and all you do for the kids and the chickens.
Yeah.
All she got. Yeah. Okay. So Melinda and I are going to talk about a quote that comes from Tamar Jacobson's book, Don't Get So Upset. Help young children manage their feelings by understanding your own. Melinda, we've both talked through Facebook, or through messages over the years, about our relationships with our mothers and how that has kind of impacted the way that we the childhoods that we try to provide for the children we work for, and the difficulties that brings. So I'm guessing that's kind of where the conversation's going to go, but let me read the quote. So Tamar says, many of us are wounded children, and we're put in the impossible situation of being hurt or humiliated by the very people we loved and depended upon for survival. When we were children, we felt fear, confusion, shame, exclusion, guilt, anger, sadness, disappointment, jealousy, frustration, exuberance, or joy about all sorts of situations, events, and interactions. To make matters more complicated, significant adults in our lives repeatedly told us how we should feel about what is happening. And then down, I'm going to skip a couple, and it says, we'll end with, as teachers of young children, we have a responsibility to understand our feelings. Only then will we be able to validate children's feelings. So I call it the mother wound, and sometimes I'll just laugh or joke, but it's real, right? It's something that, just what Tamar said, there was someone we were dependent on, and we deserved a different kind of relationship than what we experienced, but for both of us, it's really strengthened our conviction. It seems like that we're not going to continue that cycle. We're gonna, even with our own children, of course, but with every child we encounter, we want to make sure they have something better. Is that fair to say?
Yes. I read a quote. I'm not sure who the author of the quote is, a long time ago. be who you needed when you were younger.
Yes, I love that one. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of, the basis of my program.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you talk about, will you talk about what that looks like day to day? Like, is it just something that you thought about a while, or is it like in your mind all day as you go through work with
Um,
young children?
I think it's on my mind all day long.
Yeah.
And it's something that's evolved over time. I think when I first started, even as a mom, if I'm honest, it
Yeah.
wasn't something that came right away. It wasn't like, oh, I'm a mom now, I'm gonna break these, generational traumas and curses. It took some time
Uh-huh.
to be a better mother.
Yeah.
Over time it evolved.
Yeah.
And I've made mistakes as a mom,
Oh,
and
sure.
you
Me
know,
too. I
and
mean, oh, sure. I know you have. No, I mean, me too.
right. And and it's taken time even as a childcare provider to evolve, to get to a place where um the emotional well-being of our program as a whole has become the basis of what we do every day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely on my mind all day long, and children's emotional needs are the bottom of that pyramid.
Uh-huh. Right.
Um,
Yeah. We it's well, it's, I've heard people say if you don't feel safe, you can't learn,
right,
and things like that. But the bottom line is, for me at this point where I am now, children are fully human, deserving of the same kinds of things, um, same kinds of respect and acknowledgement that we, expect for ourselves in interactions. And so, yeah, it's the case can be made that you should pay attention to children's emotions because you want them to learn something. If that's, your goal is the learning, the emotions still come in.
right,
But my goal at this point is the humanity, and the way that the children that I interact with experience being human, and then therefore the way I experience being human,
right,
and that sort of guides. I when I started working with children when I was 19, um, just because children fed my needs. Like, I was good with children. They liked me. They, they would hug me, and that was what I was getting from it. It was still that mother wound, I feel like. I was looking for validation and acceptance and safety, emotional safety, and I got that from being with children. And then, yeah, as I got to be an older woman I was a mom and working a little bit longer with the children, and I can see now, Lisa Murphy says broken people, the field attracts broken people, and I definitely think that was for me. But so I don't know if you kind of went through a similar, or if your early days were different.
yeah, I think so. That's quite similar. I was, I became the neighborhood babysitter at like 12, 13
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
And all the neighborhood kids loved me, and I was the fun, teenage babysitter, and I did get a lot of validation during those troubled teenage years from that.
Hmm.
And then I became a nanny and worked at a daycare center for a while. And again, I really enjoyed working with the kids, and I became a family childcare provider 22 years ago now. And yeah, as I evolved, I became, it took a long time to, I went from, the typical teacher directed, curriculum, all that sort of thing was important, into the play-based, more laid back, child-centered. Um, and as that evolved, the emotional aspect of meeting children's emotional needs also evolved, I think, with that, sort of
Hmm.
at the same time, coincidentally.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely kind of the same path. Yeah, it's definitely evolved over time
Yeah.
as I've evolved, and as I've worked
Right.
through my own issues.
Hmm.
It's kind of been a parallel path between my healing and understanding children's emotional
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I still spend time with children because I'm getting something out of it. It's
Right.
not like, it's still just, fun for me. And they're the people I'd rather hang out with most days. But, yeah, you get, I was gonna say you get older and do better,
Right.
or better, you do better.
Better. Right.
Maybe is safer, but I also, who was it that has started saying something? Suzanne Axelson now says, when you know better, you do different. And there's just a little bit of a tweak in that for me. But I think that's really true. And it's okay. I guess what I'm saying to people listening right now is it's okay to not have been as aware your whole career with children, uh, as you are now. But it's hard to work with children and their feelings when you have not been able to, and I think this is kind of the point of tomorrow's book, when you've not been able to express your own feelings or feel your own feelings for so much of the time when you're really forming things for yourself, in early childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see that I'm older than my assistants now. So that's a lot of the conversation we'll have during the day is,
Mhm.
I'll see, and I still have triggers,
Oh, sure.
we'll talk a lot about, I'll joke and I'll say, okay, the human side of me feels this. And now the experienced ECE side of me knows this.
Oh,
And
that's great.
I'll talk very openly with them about what the difference is,
Yeah,
and things like that. So,
that's
you know,
great. Do you have an example of that? Like what would that
um,
be?
it's the typical when children have meltdowns over things, the human side of me
Yeah.
thinks it's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But I know that it's very real to them. It's very
Mhm.
real to them that the shoe doesn't feel right, or that,
Yes.
the crayon is not the right color green, or,
Mhm.
it's very real to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, something like
Yeah.
that. But to me, it's ridiculous. Just use a different crayon, or, to me,
Yes.
because, growing up, it was,
Hmm.
you're lucky you had a crayon was the
Right.
response I would get, sort
Right.
of.
Yeah.
So
So, okay. Yeah. The human side.
the human.
That's such a great way of looking at things. And I'm so impressed that, um, that's how you're then, supporting your assistants now, and they can then support children in that way. Um, what I sort of struggle with sometimes, because I know, we read things that say, and this is a newer struggle for me. Um, we just, part of what we do to support children's emotional development is to name their feelings, give them a name and acknowledge, first acknowledge that they're feeling something and then try and give it a name. But I feel like now that's really presumptuous of me to think I can know, and I learned this from a 4-year-old who was under the table crying. He didn't want to get out and go to his speech therapy session. He won't he and in hindsight, I would have been, yeah, okay, fine, stand at the table and you don't have to go today. But I
Right.
thought, oh, I'm gonna be a great teacher in this moment, and I'm gonna name his emotions for him. And so it's like, oh, it seems like you're really mad. And he just, like, it blew another gasket for him. He was like, I am not mad, I'm upset and frustrated. He just was so mad at me for getting it wrong. So I know that may have been, just me and Michael in that moment, but it did make me stop and think, okay, I can say things like, I see tears, or I can hear your loud voice. It seems like you're mad, instead of saying, oh, you're mad, and sort of adding to it. Do you know what I mean? Did that make any sense? It felt
Yeah,
like a little
absolutely. Yeah.
rambly.
Yeah.
So we can learn from the children in those moments too, if we reflect about it a little bit. But
Yeah.
so beyond, um, I feel like I'm doing more interview, and so I'm sorry if this, but I'm just interested in hearing you specifically talk about some things. So beyond saying, oh, it seems like you're mad, or, it's okay to feel that way, those kinds of things. When you talk about supporting children's or validating children's emotions, or being what we needed when we were younger, what kinds of real action does that mean? What does that look like in real life, and not just two grown-ups on a Zoom screen?
Well, the big one for me is when I used to worry when parents would show up, they'd hear a lot of crying and screaming, and I used to worry, or I used to try and shush children. And now I tell parents, when you show up, you're going to hear a lot of upset children.
Yeah.
And if I'm not acknowledging them or holding them or rocking them, don't be upset. And don't think I'm ignoring them. I know my children and I have good relationships with them. And if I'm not ignoring them, some of them don't want that right now. So if there's a child off in the corner crying, they've asked me to leave them alone. And I'm allowing them to cry. That's what they want to do. So if you come in to pick up your child and there's another child out in my living room by themselves crying, that's what they've asked to do. I know they're there. I know they're crying. I check in with them, so that's been a big one, is me allowing noise.
Yeah.
That may be uncomfortable for grown-up ears. So that's been a big one.
Yeah. I think some people talk about social emotional learning, and to me, that's very much the adult being in charge of it all. And I try to think more about just social and emotional development and what, so of course I want to have an understanding, child developmentally speaking, of how that happens and what children need, and co-regulation and self-regulation and all those things. But it also means just knowing what you just talked about, knowing the children. Right. Like, it's not enough to know this is what my book says. Heaven forbid that early childhood nerd is moving you away from a book. It's not just what the book says, it's what this child is telling you. And if, they're crying on the couch, you can check in and they say, not now, or go away. That's not an insult or disrespect for a child to say, go away, I don't want you right now. Right. You're reading the room, you're reading the child, you're following that relationship that you have. And I think that's so important. Right. When people talk about SEL, it's usually in my mind a product they're trying to sell me, instead of just this child's human emotions and my human emotions. Right. What are we figuring out?
Right. The other day, the children were all at the table, happened to be doing an activity at the same time. And another child just wanted to lay on their cot and be left alone. And somebody walked in and, and I still catch myself going, we're not ignoring him. He just,
I would too. Yeah.
He just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
And we check in, you sure you don't want to come over and join us? And he said, no, just leave me alone. And so that's what we were doing, So a lot of times it's just knowing your children and knowing, what they need in the moment and things like that. So
yeah. Oh, I had something and it's gone. I was going to connect it back to tomorrow and it was going to be really smooth. I don't know what I was going to say, but it reminded me of a story. What you were just talking about reminded me of something that happened to me a few years ago, when I was at the Purdue preschool. And so 4 days a week I was with a preschool, and then on Fridays we were with it was like a toddler play group to support their speech and language development anyway, but the parents were there with us that whole time. And then we had graduate students there, and then there was me, and there was a speech language pathologist, and there was this little girl that I had not connected with. She didn't need me. And so I tried to, I didn't want to force my, and earlier in my career, I would have really worked hard to get over that. But there were other adults in the space that she was connected to. It just wasn't me. And it's happened like 3 times that I've got a kid that I just can't. Over 30 years, there's like 3, and it's so hard for me. But anyway, her mom had to go in like to an office to talk to the speech language pathologist and the grad student who was working with her. And we knew that would be really hard for the little girl to not have mom there. And so they were going to do the whole sneak away thing, right? Where mom would sneak in the office and someone would distract the little girl. And I don't do that. So I moved closer to her when I knew they were making their move, and I was like, come play with me for a minute. Mom went in the office, little girl cried and cried and cried and cried, of course. And I wasn't picking her up and trying to hold her. I was staying close to where she was. And I'd say, Mom will be right back. Those reassuring things we're supposed to say didn't work. And it was becoming, everyone was staring at her. So we went out into the little lobby area, and she immediately goes under this like double chair, like you'd have in a doctor's waiting room. She's under there on the floor, face on the floor, crying, snot everywhere. And so I sat on the floor there, and that made her cry more. So I just kind of stood, and every now and again I'd say, I'm still here if you need me, and whatever. And that like freaked people out that I wasn't dragging her out from under the chair. And it was real when mom came out and saw me just standing there, and little girl all snotty under her face on the floor. It was hard for all the other adults around. And I don't know where I'm going with this, except that it's an example for me of a time where my own need might have been, no, we need to get this under control, or I have to look like I'm comforting her, or this poor scared baby needs me whether she knows it or not, and I'm going to drag her out and I'm going to hold her. And well, there was a time when I would have probably held her bear hug kind of thing until she calmed down. And I learned a lot in that moment from that 4-year-old, or at that time she was a 2-year-old, that it's not about my needs always. And I think that does tie back to this conversation about understanding our own feelings. That was hard for me as the adult who was a child who couldn't get those needs met. And even as an adult, sometimes when I'm really having a hard time, I think I wish I had that kind of mom that I could go to in this moment.
Right.
So I don't know, whatever that confession, whatever that long story was about. It's there every day for me. There's the human side of me who needed that and wants to give it. And then there's the early childhood side of me who knows that she's not going to get back up to the frontal lobe by me dragging her out from under the chair and telling her that she needs to get back to her frontal lobe.
Right.
She's just in that hijack until someone who she will self or co-regulate with comes along. But there was a lot of my own need. If that had happened earlier in my career, my need would have driven that, instead of thinking, okay, no, she's just really dysregulated and I'm not helping, I'm making it worse. Exactly. Do what you want with that, Melinda.
No, exactly. Because in my house, it was don't cry. It was shut down. So, I will certainly co-regulate with children who need to be held, who need to snuggle, who need that cuddle. But I want to make sure that the children who need to cry, who need to scream, who need to punch things that are punchable,
yeah.
In the appropriate ways are allowed to do that, because I was not. So I try to make sure that, I know my children well enough that when they need to scream and hoot and holler, they're absolutely allowed to. And I want to make certain that my parents who walk in on that understand the importance as to why that's allowed here.
Yeah. It's such an important, people talk about family engagement or parent education all the time, and it just makes me bristle. But what you're doing is engaging your families in the program and building community, whether it's, and what you're showing is that it's not always easy or pretty to do those things in authentic ways. But it starts with you, right? Having made a decision that this is the kind of place you want to have for childhood. And you just want to help other people understand it when they don't. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That little girl came back for preschool for a year when they were older, and the mom still, like, I had difficulty connecting to mom. The little girl still wanted nothing to do with me. Until we painted feet. Then she was like, I got a little warmth. I got a little connection when she was painting her feet. For some reason, that really relaxed her. Okay, so when I sent you the screenshot of that quote, did you have other directions in your mind that you thought we might go, or why? I told you I was going to ask you why you thought this was a good one for us to talk about.
When I first came across Tamara and her book, like that was a real eye-opening. That was probably the catalyst for all
Yeah.
of this for me.
Okay.
Was her book.
Uh-huh.
When I finally read her book, and I was like, wow, yeah, that's it. Like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I think I'd always felt like I knew the reason I wanted to do this work was to give some children what I didn't get, and whether that was healthy in the moment or not, I feel like it's gotten to a healthy place now. And maybe it's age, maybe it's experience, who knows what brought me to a different point. But I read the book and I was like, oh, this is the instinct, this is the vibe put into words of what I've been thinking. So part of it was identifying that I have to be aware enough of my own feelings to know when I'm seeking validation or acknowledgement of my own feelings in this interaction with a child, or when I need to kind of shift away from what I need and try to figure out what they need, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always, it's not, even now it's not consistent. There's moments where I'm like, ooh, that was about my need.
Right. Because for a long time I would say, oh, I used to think children needed me, but I need children, just as much. And then I think, well, is that self-serving of me to say that? So I still work through, is it,
Yeah. So now I wonder, is that a problem if we realize what we're doing is self-serving? Like, isn't it okay to think about our own needs sometimes too? And when does it become sort of unhealthy or unhelpful?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's deep.
Well, maybe someone will comment the answer.
Yeah.
When they listen. I don't know. I mean, so I guess here's where I'll take that. A lot of times I get impatient and critical on the show or in conversation with people or when I'm teaching at the college. When we talk about like children need a warm, welcoming environment, safe environment, and that includes the people, the adults in it, and that means you have to be warm and authentic about your own emotions, but do it in a way that's not scary, all that kind of thing. And I'll get pushback that, well, teachers are stressed out humans too. So they're going to have bad days. And my argument is always like, well, yeah, but not in a way that, like, of course you're going to have bad days. But I guess what I'm saying is I expect more from the adult. I expect more sort of self-control, self-regulation, all the things we say we want the children to have, and from someone who's been trying this, in my case, for 5 decades, as opposed to 48 months of life, Right. So I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out and see if you have any thoughts about adults being real, but balancing that with.
I think it's definitely a balance. We're definitely the adult. We have to take responsibility for our own self-regulation at this point.
Yeah.
But I have days where I'm a little off.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly okay with apologizing to children when that happens.
That's so important. I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
I will say, gosh, I have a headache today and I'm really sorry I was crabby or and the kids will say, boy, Miss Melinda, you need a nap. Like or something like that. I definitely have to work at sometimes, when I worked alone, I joke with people, I'll say when I worked alone, I would go in the bathroom and rage whisper swear words into the mirror at myself.
Yes.
Straighten my shirt.
It's so cathartic. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And then walk back out into the playroom like everything was fine. I am the adult in the room.
Yeah.
Now I can complain to my coworkers. What, out of earshot and but we,
Yeah, I think, I just think there are there's a difference between having a bad day or having moments when you get really overwhelmed yourself.
Right. And just not liking what you do.
And just not liking what you do, or
Right.
just not liking children, but not being willing to admit that you don't like children,
Right.
and everything they
Right.
do is annoys you. So you're
Right.
short with them all day, or you're
Right.
I think that's what I'm saying, is that there are some folks,
Right.
and maybe they just don't have awareness of that feeling, what they're feeling, or maybe they're not willing to have that honest think through about what's happening.
Right.
But it's not just teacher stress. It's some people just really shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
And that's so hard for the kids who are stuck in those
Right.
places.
That's not fair to the children at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a miserable way to go through your day. To like, just, I mean, I get not everybody's going to have their dream job, but when you are in this work with children, and you've chosen to be in this work with children, you have some responsibility about your own emotions, I guess, is
Right.
where I'm going to land with that.
Right.
It's tricky, though. I know it's tricky. I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying, if you ever have a bad day, you're irreparably harming children emotionally. But like what you described, you have that trigger, you know that about yourself, and you have found ways to bring it back to your own frontal lobe.
For sure. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to look at the quote again and see. This is excellent podcast when I do this. I know this is everybody's favorite part of the episode. I don't know. The other thing that I go to when I read anything Tamar reads or writes is just the tremendous responsibility that we have now, choosing to work with children, having our own hurts and strong feelings and needs, and trying to navigate that all. It's more than just, being a teacher or coming in. And so I guess I think so. I wonder sometimes if those early childhood teachers who are so dependent on circle time and lesson plans and sticking to the schedule, if part of that is the need to have a regulated space, a regulated classroom, because of their own discomfort with emotion. Do you know what I mean? Like if that's sort of their safe place to be regimented, and we hide behind structure instead of just being humans together in a space.
Yeah. Or need for validation, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one little boy, and maybe you've heard this because I use this story a lot. The listeners certainly will be like, oh, here comes a Gus story. This little boy, Gus, we were super connected, and he was just upset one morning and like got out of the classroom and started down the hall, and I had to get him and bring him back, and we were sitting together, and he said, I just don't want to be here. And I said, you know what, Gus, I don't either today, but here we are. and people were shocked that I would like just talk that way. And it wasn't me being sarcastic, like, yeah, I don't want to be here either, but it was just, yeah, I know. This wasn't your choice to be here. I would rather be in bed today too, but here we are. What can we do together?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I had a little boy one time. The school agers are allowed to be outside without direct supervision.
Nice.
Here in New York. So I had a little boy who was outside, and he had my patio umbrella, and he was beating it into the ground, breaking it, of course. And
of course, yeah.
The human side of me is rumbling, going, I get ready to stomp out there and go, And of course, I take a minute because, in between that action and reaction is that brief pause of how am I going to handle this, So I go out there and I said, what are you doing? So he puts it down. We had a conversation about it, and he lays down in the grass and he puts his hand over his heart and he's looking up at the sky and he goes, I just love it here. No one ever makes me feel stupid. Or
oh my God.
And I was like, oh, like broke my heart, because
Yes.
just in that moment when the human side of me felt triggered because
Yeah.
he was doing something I really could have yelled at him for.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't. We talked through it and I said, you
Yeah.
know, don't do that. You're breaking my umbrella. And
Yeah.
and that story always sticks with me, that I could have reacted so differently, and,
Yeah.
and he got in trouble a lot at school, and, for
Hmm.
things like that.
Hmm.
So that story always sticks with me, that instead of making him feel like he was bad or stupid, like he said, those were his words. No one
Right.
ever makes me feel stupid.
Right.
And that story always sticks with me.
Yeah.
That,
Or you could have just gone out, taken the umbrella and said, I'm going to put this away for a minute, and sort of
right. Which
ignored
is
it all.
right, right. I said,
Um,
I'm just gonna put it back on the table. Here, let me give you something
yeah.
you can. And I think I ended up giving him sticks and tree stumps or something, and said,
Yeah.
I need some
Yeah.
wood split or something. I gave him something else to do.
Yeah. But I guess there was sort of an acknowledgement that he needed something from you in that interaction, instead of just like, maybe in my earlier days, I would have been uncomfortable with his big feeling and just taken that away and gone on my own, without that connection and
Right.
staying a minute to see how he responded and laying on the ground. And the other thing is that wherever it was that he felt stupid, I'm sure it wasn't the adult's intention to make him feel stupid. And we need to think about, when we're thinking about kind of the emotional climate we set, and how we try to meet children's needs when they show us they have those needs. um it's not what we intended, it's how they feel.
Right.
It's how they interpret it. So if they present to us an idea that we have done something that made them feel sad or angry or lose control, we have to be able to let go of our own ego enough to say, okay, what did I contribute to this, and how can I either help now or be more careful about this going
Yeah.
forward. Or one child you can joke around with, the other one maybe takes it a little personally or gets scared or hurt, because we're both sarcastic, jokey people, it seems like. So when we're being authentic, that will come through for some children, and it doesn't work for all
Right.
children. And
Yeah.
just keeping that in mind. And I sort of think that's where I land always with Tamar Jacobson's stuff, is I just have to keep in mind my own, how my own experience has impacted who I am, and how, what I need to know about that to inform what I'm doing with children.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Sometimes I'm grateful for what I've been through, because I think if I didn't have that experience with
yeah.
mother, I wouldn't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So I think that helps in a
Yeah.
weird sort
Yeah.
of way.
Yeah. It does. I feel the same way. Everything builds to who I am now, and I'm pretty happy with who I am and
Right.
what's happening. But other than the fact that I can't have like just a regular friendship with anyone who could possibly be of mothering age to me,
I mean,
because I don't want to slip into, will you be my mom now?
yeah. Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem with anybody older than me telling me what to do. So yeah,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit
Well,
of an
yeah. Age doesn't matter with me for that. I just don't want
Well,
anyone
I mean,
telling me
yeah,
what to do. Hence my catchphrase, don't boss me. I say in love and laughter to a lot of people in my life. Okay, well, thanks. Is there anything else, any last thought or anything you wish you'd said that you haven't had a chance to yet?
No, I thank you for having me.
I mean, it literally has been forever that I've been like, maybe you should come on the show. Maybe you should come on the show. And then I don't know, you made some kind of post maybe that you were going to try and step outside of your comfort zone and do some public speaking. And I was like, I've got her now. So thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun to talk to you face to face. And I'm sure everybody will appreciate what you've shared. And if you don't already, you have a Mountaintop Family Childcare Facebook page, right?
Facebook. Yep.
They can follow you there. You post wonderful things and teach us all a lot about children and just your genuine commitment to childhood and play always comes through, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening. Come back again for another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd.